It might be hard to believe I was once a college student, and at that time I thought I was pretty cool. But from my bio and from Chuck speaking, you heard I have 3 daughters. One's a graduate student in Texas, one's a sophomore at the U of A, and my youngest daughter's a junior in high school. I like to think I'm still pretty cool, but I can assure you my attempts to be cool with them and their friends didn't go over very good. So I'm not going to try to impress you with my coolness today, since I can't pass their test. I do want to thank Chuck for the introduction today and his friendship. I want to thank President Pollard, and I also want to thank the Office of Christian Formation for inviting me here today. Excuse me, allergies. I will say I was really impressed by a university that has an Office of Christian Formation and the intentional focus on assuring that in your student life, this campus has an office that's dedicated to creating an intentional culture based on Christian principles. Every organization is going to have a culture. What separates great organizations is that they are very intentional about their culture, and you are attending school in such a place. I too am part of an organization that is intentional about a religious culture, one that was founded by a group of Catholic nuns 190 years ago. And though the times have changed and there's been many challenges that could have diluted that culture, the values and principles the ministry was founded on are alive and well today. Because there are fewer sisters these days, they considered selling the health ministry 10 years ago and using the proceeds for other ministries and for other types of ministries other than healthcare. However, instead, they decided to keep the health ministry and that it needed to continue, even if the sisters were not present. Their primary condition in continuing that ministry was that all Mercy leaders and staff were committed to the same set of values that the sisters were committed to when they began the ministry. And they call this simply formation. So both JBU and Mercy are intentional and unashamed of assuring that those who enter our doors will experience the power of Christ through their very intentional formation. Our organizations are also like-minded, or are so like-minded that we've also, I understand I've become unpopular on campus. Well, I told you I was going to be popular for getting you out early. I've also understand that I'm going to be unpopular because we've stolen Dr. Chad Ray, who's going to be our Vice President of Mission and Ethics, and we're so glad to have Chad, and you can be assured that his work will continue to touch many lives through our ministry. So thank you for forming him here and giving him an opportunity to work with us. We see many other opportunities to work together with JBU to develop future leaders, future nurses, many other fields. While this really isn't the topic of my talk today, I can't help but promote the endless opportunities to seek ministry in healthcare. When I ask most people what they think when they think of occupations in healthcare, I get generally the same responses: physicians, nurses, and other healthcare technical fields. I think a lot of people are surprised to learn that careers in healthcare are much broader than that. Just about any occupation you can think of, you'll find in healthcare: business majors, chefs, housekeeping, maintenance, IT, supply chain, marketing, accounting, attorneys, HR, I could go on and on. We have over 250 job classifications, all who are seeking to accomplish one mission statement. As the Sisters of Mercy before us, we bring to life the healing ministry of Jesus through compassionate care and exceptional service. And every person in our organization plays a big part in carrying that out. Well, yes, that was a bit of an infomercial, I will admit. It's going to end right there. But it is a perfect lead-in to what my intended topic was today. If you take nothing else away from my time today, I want you to hear one thing. You were not placed on this earth by accident. You were created by God for a purpose. I believe I was created by God for a purpose. He has a plan for each of us, but he also created this little confusing wrinkle called free will, right? We get to choose if we fulfill that purpose or not. So a couple of natural questions might be, do I know what my purpose is? And how are you supposed to know what your purpose is? Before I attempt to answer that question, indulge me for just a couple of minutes with a story that'll be familiar to you, but a little different take. When I was first contacted about speaking today, it was around the first week of January. And my first question's always, what's the topic? What is it that you would like for me to talk about? And generally speaking, I don't get a lot of direction regarding topic. And I might also add that's a little bit dangerous for an Italian from Tontitown to hand him a microphone and tell him, not give him any direction at all about what to talk about. But you all were spared because as I sat in church the Sunday after Chuck called me, it happened to be the Epiphany, when the three wise men followed a star to discover a newborn king. What they discovered was so much more than a worldly king. See, they were born for a purpose, but they didn't know what that purpose was. I'm confident that as they were studying astrology and practicing their craft, they had fulfillment in advising their leaders about constellations and attempting to explain what those constellations foretold. However, do you think they had any idea that they would become part of the greatest event in history and that their story would still be being told more than 2,000 years later? Yet they were prepared by their education and experiences to recognize a star, and not just any star, a once-in-history kind of star. There were not hundreds of wise men present for this event. There were three. They were born for a purpose, one that they could not even conceive of, but because of their faith, they followed a sign in the sky to discover their purpose. I would doubt that their purpose ended that day. I would expect that they went on to tell their story, spread the good news, and discover many other revelations about their true purpose in life. But if they had not been open to God's plan for them, they would have missed it. So for me as president, what is my purpose? What is it that God has prepared for me to accomplish during my time on earth? Answering that's really complicated and can take longer than the time I have today. But what I can tell you is it's not always as bright and visible as a star in the sky. But probably like the wise men, sometimes what I was confident was my purpose wasn't it at all. Many times it's after the fact that I discover a purpose that I was prepared for. I look back and it becomes very clear that by my actions, words, or deeds, I had an impact on a community or an individual, or maybe even saved a life. One thing I'm sure of is that looking back over my 50 years, virtually every experience I've had has prepared me for a specific moment in time or for leading efforts that I was uniquely placed to impact. Some are very small things, some are very large things. And let me offer a couple of small examples. You heard in my bio that my family immigrated to the U.S., came to Tontitown, and that was in the 1890s. For those of you who are familiar with the area, which was a small number, but hopefully some of you have encountered Tontitown, you might view it as a little Italian community, kind of a cool place to get a little Italian food with a couple of good restaurants, and in August, attend the Grape Festival. Well, it became that. But not dissimilar to the immigrants of today, it didn't start out that way. The Italians who immigrated here were outcasts. They didn't speak English. They had what seemed to be strange customs, and they were not accepted. Their lives were hard. Their church was burned down, and no one would buy their crops that they worked so hard to produce. They persevered. They had faith. They were led here for a purpose, and they became a part of the Northwest Arkansas community that we know today. What does their story have to do with my job? Well, about 25% of our workforce are immigrants from all over the world. Some are physicians, some work in housekeeping, some are nurses, and many other jobs throughout our hospital. Because of the experiences of my family, I have a great appreciation for their courage and their desire to fulfill their purpose. And I have the opportunity to tell my family's story and support them in their work. Do I think you have to be the president of a company to be fortunate enough to have a purpose from God? You know the answer to that. I get to create an environment where God's purpose and others is evident through our 2,000 coworkers every day. I see many of these people who may not speak English or whose skin color is different than mine, or have had many personal struggles to assure a good life for their family, fulfill their purpose. I see them at the bedside holding the hand of a lonely patient, praying with them. I see them take great pride in assuring our hospital is clean and free from harmful infections. I see them use their God-given talents to perform surgery. I receive cards and letters from patients who say that they encountered a person who simply smiled at them and it made them feel better. God works through all of us in big and small ways. A good portion of these people do not make a lot of money, and they do not have what might be considered a prestigious job, but they have a purpose, and they are every bit as responsible for bringing the healing ministry of Jesus to our patients as those who are practicing the healing arts at the bedside. In my current role, my purpose is to assure I provide all our coworkers the environment to fulfill that purpose. Yeah, that sounds really simple. And yes, my days are filled with chaos and opportunities and disruptive events, challenges, and many celebrations. But what makes me get up and go to work in the morning and be able to sleep at night is knowing that we are not simply there just earning a paycheck. We are responsible for healing the mind, body, and soul, and our staff takes that responsibility very seriously. You are being formed in a Christian environment, and I work for a religious institution. Both environments seemingly make it easier to discover God's purpose. Does that mean if you work in a different environment, it will be harder to fulfill your purpose? I've had the good fortune to know and be around many great leaders who work for companies in a profit-driven world. How do they reconcile God's purpose with chasing the almighty dollar? The fact that a person works for a company that makes a profit does not exclude them from fulfilling God's purpose. Every entity has to make money in order to survive. In my work, our primary purpose is ministry, healing. But I can guarantee you that if we do not run a good business that produces a profit margin, our ministry will cease to exist. I've met many people like Don Soderquist, Mike Duke, or Doug McMillan, who've led Walmart, or J.B. Hunt and his wife Jonelle, Johnny Roberts, Shelley Simpson at J.B. Hunt Transport, or Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, or David Green, the founder of Hobby Lobby. I could go on and on. All work in profit-driven companies, but all freely and openly express their faith and have created cultures in their organization that are based on Christian values and have been exceptional examples of fulfilling God's purpose through their work, actions, and examples. And all have used the wealth to impact many lives, both in the U.S. and around the world. God created you for a purpose. He's preparing you uniquely for that purpose. How will you know what it is? Will you see a star in the sky? Unlikely. It is one purpose. Is it one purpose or is it many purposes? I can't answer that question. What I can tell you is that if you have faith, follow Him, and choose to follow the signs in your life, you'll be led to that purpose or purposes. There is a mission field every place you go. That could be feeding the hungry in Africa. It could be health and healing. It could be working in retail, trucking, or food services. Whatever it is, God will call you there, and He will place you where He wants you to be. He will prepare you for your purpose, and you may not even initially recognize that you are fulfilling His purpose. But rest assured, if you trust Him, you will. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on your campus today. I hope you all have a great rest of your week.